Alright, here's some tips for D major, like tricks you can do, because you can do a lot with this little shape. So a lot of people when they learn guitar, they think you have to like learn all these fancy chord names and all this stuff, but really what you can do is just take simple shapes and then start to change them with a few extra notes and end up with a lot of cool chords. So this is D major, so it's 0 on D, and then first finger on 2 on G, third finger on 3 on B, and middle finger on 2 on the top string. It makes a triangle shape. A lot of people that are beginners, like their fingers end up kind of like this. So you got to kind of twist your hand a tiny bit to get more up on the tips and get these fingers closer. And it's just a triangle shape. So it's always helpful just to memorize the shape itself. So see, it's like a triangle. When you're doing this one, you want to strum from the D string. So here's the first trick you can do. The first couple tricks is you can just lift up your middle finger. So you strum D, and you just lift up your middle finger. This is called Sus2 chord now. And you can go back with your middle finger. This is D major. This is D Sus2. And even if you don't know what that means, it doesn't matter. You just do it and see what it sounds like. D major, D Sus2. So I tell my students that the Sus2 is called the yoga chord, because if you want to remember it in your head, it kind of sounds like the most soothing chord on guitar. So it's D major, D Sus2, and you could already make up a riff with just those two chords. You could start out it would sound kind of like a soft song, but that could be used for any part of the song or the intro. The other first trick everyone should learn is Sus4. You just add your pinky up on to G up on the top. So Sus4s are a little more like rock sounding. I mean, they can also sound kind of soft, but generally if you put some distortion on there and you just especially with some distortion, which I don't have on it, would start to sound more like a rock song. So same thing, you could take this simple idea, you could just do a little arpeggio, just kind of random, and then you could add your pinky. Kind of sounds like an AC/DC song because they use Sus4 chords a lot. And one other thing is if you a lot of beginners do down strums all the time. If you do more up strums, especially when you're altering the top notes, you can do a lot of cooler stuff. Because then you can start out like, you really hear those top notes. So up, up, up. I did all up strums on the Sus4. Then I'm just palm muting down, Sus4. So far I really haven't changed my D major shape, and you can get all this sound out of it. Or you could combine the two, Sus2 major, Sus4. So those are the first tricks everyone should know about D major. And the most famous song that uses it is Tom Petty. This is D major, D Sus4, D Sus4, D Sus2, D major. So regular D, pinky, pinky, regular, lift up middle finger. Alright, so those are the standard ones. There's tons of other tricks though, so I'll go through a few more. Here's D major. I like this one. You lift up your first finger from the second fret on the G string, and you put it on the second fret on the A string. Like I could make up a whole song with just these two chords. This is a B minor 7 chord. Actually, I'm sorry, it's not a B minor 7, it's like a... It's either a D over B, it's a D sus4 over B, or it's like a B minor with a sharp 5. But all that stuff doesn't really matter. It's more fun just to toggle the chords, just see what happens. And this one sort of sounds really open, doesn't sound too cheesy. Doesn't sound kind of like sometimes these sus chords can sound a little cheesy. So I think this is a nice one. So you just go D major, and then you just change this finger to here. Then you could do like the sus4. Sus4. So it's D, and then move your finger to the B. And then I'll do another one that you could do is you can do D. You can add your thumb on this note right here. A lot of people actually strum D like this. A lot of times I just use it as a change on the D. It's still a D chord. So you go. Now this one doesn't really work, like you would need one more chord. So a lot of people go like this, D. You add your thumb here. And you can move your thumb to the 3rd fret. So D, I'm hitting the D string. D over F sharp. D major, D over F sharp, D over G. Notice I never have to change this chord. So you can start mixing them all together. You could do D, D sus2, D sus4, the D over B thing. D major, D sus2, D sus4, D over B. Now I go to my F sharp. Like a build up, back to D. It sounds kind of stupid just to keep going back to D there, so maybe what you would end up doing is going to G for a second. So instead of going to D, I would do build up. And back to the beginning. So there's a bunch of tricks that are kind of more soft sounding, like non-bluesy, sort of open sounding things. A lot of people want a little bit harder sound, so one thing you can do is, first of all, drop this top note out. So you're playing D. One thing people do is they just don't play that top note. It sounds harder already. The reason why is this is actually a power chord. I'm going to do it on clean tone still because then then you won't think just because the distortion or whatever is making it sound harder or bluesier. So it's still going to be clean, but you just drop the top F sharp out, and you just do only these 2 notes. And I'm muting this now. But actually, here we'll go back to here. Get rid of this finger and keep these fingers where they are, and then you can do all sorts of tricks with this middle finger, because now you have this middle finger is free. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit the D string, and then I'm going to add my middle finger on the 3rd fret on the D string. So now it's a bluesy sound instead of more of a major scale sound. But it's just basically take the D, take your middle finger off, leave everything else the same, and then you use this middle finger right there. And then you can do the same thing on this note. So then you can mix them up. You can hit middle finger, 3rd fret on D string. You can even go down to this one. But really the one that sounds best is right here. These are more like bonus. It's pretty crazy how much stuff you can do with just this little shape. And it's just either the 3rd fret, open, 3rd fret, and open. Now this sounds really lame, so you can't really add that in now. You just gotta leave it out. And you also gotta really kind of accent the bass notes, like just hit them. You can just strum and kind of make it still work. It does sound a lot cooler if you start getting good at hitting the single notes. The last trick I would show with D major is this is the easiest shape by far to start learning how to move around. So what you do is you just take it, you strum only, don't hit the D string anymore, just hit the top 3 notes. Then just try moving it somewhere else. And like pick like 2 or 3 other spots to go to. Don't do it all random. Like generally you want like 3 chords if you're trying to make your own chord progression. You only want like 3 chords or maybe 4. So like let's say I'm gonna actually track this finger because this is the root note of the chord. If that doesn't make sense, then don't worry about it. But I'm looking at, this is on the 3rd fret, this finger's on the 3rd fret. So then I can move to the 6th fret. So that finger's on 6 now, 8, and back to this one. So that's kind of got a rock bluesier sound, so I could use that with this. Or you could try some other spots, like you could go 3rd fret, you could go up to the 10th fret, so this finger's on 10, go to 8th fret. Now it's major, really major sounding, or you could do something just random, like you could just go up by 2. So that's getting a little weird. 3rd fret, 5th fret, 7th fret. It sounds kind of cool though. See, as I added the 4th chord, it starts to not make as much musical sense. So that's why, I mean, if you just do 3 chords, you can get away with pretty much anything. Or you could do, this is a cool trick people do, with sliding it. You can just slide. If you do it really fast, it sounds good. And then you could use the same trick to slide the other. So there's tons more tricks to do with D, but I tried to keep them all simple, like based on this shape. Because once you start, the next thing is to start learning a little bit more about other ways to do a D chord, like, or there's other ways to do it, and then you can get a little more creative in going from like one shape. You can get more creative in going between the shapes, but the point of this lesson is hopefully that you'll take shapes you already know, like D, and just get rid of a finger and see what happens. Or move a finger somewhere. There's a lot more possibilities I didn't do. I could have taken like this finger and moved it down to G. Or I could have gone, you can get a little weirder, you could do like, you could do it on, you could just do it on C, or if you can stretch, you could add like your pinky somewhere. I just point out the ones that I use the most daily, so hopefully this lesson was kind of helpful, and good luck.